Well, hello everyone. It's so great to be with all of you here today in San Francisco. I have to tell you, when I think about DEI in this moment, I had to actually go and check and make sure there was nothing breaking, no breaking news, because we are watching the clock and the algorithms and the information every single time. And so I wanted to be sure nothing late breaking has done this, because our DEI practitioners, they are fatigued just solely because of that. But I am thrilled to be here with you all today, representing Seramount, a consultancy that specializes in talent solutions for better workplaces. And as we've spent the last 40 years supporting today's partners, about 600 organizations, as they advance DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I want to say it. During our time together today, I want to share with you a little bit about, yes, some real realities that I think come together to really form kind of workplace inclusion's critical turning point. And so I'm going to address reality number one. Let's say it. There is a real elephant in the room. DEI is facing new political, legal realities. The ideology, the public sentiment is divided and polarized. And it's interesting because as we think about our work, the US administration is continuing to politicize this work. And it's working. Here's why. It is June 2025. Happy Pride Month. But I challenge you to go look maybe in your social media and perhaps look at your favorite brand, where their logo may have had embedded the beautiful tapestry of the pride flag. Go see who's doing this in today's environment versus who did this just last year. And I find there's really this elephant in the room that we need to talk about. And it is currently this, quite frankly, backlash. I think it is because people are frustrated with the slow change in progress. I think that they're concerned about some of the performative pledges they had seen in recent years. I think it's mixed with some unclear strategic priorities, defining truly what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean. And also, I think that there's some real visible cracks in leadership and their support of this work. And so right now, progress feels like it is in jeopardy. And so as we navigate through these realities, I want to share a little data that supports some of these positions. So Seramount hosts what we call employee voice sessions. We've been hosting these sessions regularly with our chief diversity officers, our heads of DEI across our 600 partner organizations across industries. And this data showcases not just when we pulse them in November, January after the inauguration, and I'm going to share with you a little data from March. But what's different about our employee voice session data is that we follow Chatham House rules. We have anonymous usernames, so when you log into the session, you come in anonymously, so you can share truly honest, real information that is happening. And it allows us to understand what are the obstacles, what are the challenges you face, and more importantly, how can we continue to support you? And we're looking forward to hearing a little bit more of these impacts come June. Now, I acknowledge that there are some pieces of this slide difficult for maybe my friends in the back to see, but I'm going to try best, as the transfer over wasn't perfect. But here's a little bit of data. The purple shade is reflective of November 2024, and the pink shade is reflective of March 2025. And so we asked our chief diversity officers, assuming a hostile regulatory legal environment in DEI, where do you fall? And we turned to a model originally developed by our friend Kenji Yoshino, who really created a model for multinationals as they were working in different countries on LGBTQ laws and inclusion. And so as we adapted this, we really wanted to give leaders kind of these different options to choose from. So on one end of the continuum, you have when in Rome. When in Rome really states that here we are, Rome is falling, we will maintain our policies, our commitments, but as the legal landscape is shifting, we actually may have to roll back and dilute some of our progress, some of the commitments we're making. On the other end, we see the advocacy model, that we're really gonna reach out and we're gonna actually really take an activist stance, an activist approach, and we're gonna be supporting our organizations and our governments to really see how we can impact even some of the laws. I had a CDO call me just a few hours ago and she said, we're not changing our name in DEI because I feel that I am betraying the people that have had built confidence in me. She's like, so we're in advocacy mode. And then we have where a lot of people fall, which is the embassy model. If you think of an embassy, it's kind of safe, it shelters us, but this is really people who are in that middle ground, and that is overwhelmingly where a lot of our partners sit. These companies are absolutely committed, but doing probably what we've talked about a little bit earlier today, which was the quiet DEI. Just a couple of observations from this data. We didn't see a ton of variance between November and January. But what we found is when in Rome has doubled. We've seen more organizations pulling back. And we noticed that 40% of our partners have impacts, are resourced, aligned to the federal government, and so we understand those real direct impacts there. And I think anecdotally, even into today's current day state, we are seeing more of this when in Rome approach. And so then we wanted to understand from November in dark purple to March. At your company, what area of DEI do you think is most negatively impacted by the current administration's policies? Well, the top three didn't change, a little bit mixed in order, but it was public statements supporting DEI, representation goals, and DEI budgets and sizes. Now, it's a few thoughts I have around representation data. The overturning of affirmative action presented us with kind of this first pass of how do we collect this information, how do we collect this data, and how do we do it safely? And what's interesting when I think about data is still good. We can still use data. But if it comes to the selection process, if it comes to decision making, that's where it's got, in this environment, to stop. We can widen, for example, our candidate pool. We can study who wants to come work in our organizations. But the second that application gets submitted, that is when we cannot look at representation data. And then I think about public statements around DEI. It's so important to keep in mind that actually our employees turn to companies before they actually turn to media, before they turn to government, nonprofits. They turn to us first for that information. So how are we communicating out, whether it be publicly or more importantly, internally inside of our organizations? And how do we continue to keep the communication line open? Because if we don't, silence tells a different story. And a lot of people turn it into a little bit of being complicit. Reality number two, the employee expectations, they so care about what we're doing inside of our organizations. Our research continues to show that culture is the key driver of talent acquisition, retention, and engagement. A Seramount 2024 survey actually showed us that 78% of employees indicate that it is extremely or very important for their company to be an inclusive organization. And the costs, if we don't do it, are extremely high. 47% of turnover is due to an unhealthy company culture. And for a salaried employee, that really matters to our bottom line because it can cost up to 1.5 to 2 times an annual salary to replace talent. But we have to communicate with them because they absolutely care and they absolutely want to understand what we are doing inside of DEI. And reflective on the slide, we asked questions around, has your name shifted or changed? And overwhelmingly, we are seeing about 50% of organizations thinking about changing their name, considering it, have changed their name. And one of the things we're seeing absolutely is words like inclusion, belonging, and culture becoming so prominent in some of these name changes. But I think it's okay. We've been here before. We've been here when maybe we were noticed as affirmative action officers, the Office of Minority Affairs, the Office of Multicultural Affairs. Then maybe we added the Office of Diversity, and then equity, and then inclusion. And I think that's only going to shift as we think about culture, inclusion, belonging, and access and opportunity. And then we think about how do we communicate this to our people? We have to keep in mind that these changes matter, because when we asked our CDOs, how is the current administration's action impacting your employees? We see there's increased anxiety and fear. They feel demoralized and even can be frustrated with leadership. It was heartbreaking to hear, as I sit on Pride Month, that some LGBTQ employees have even considered going back into the closet because of their anxiety and fear. Demoralized. Overall, they see morale as low. Their hope is low when it comes to society as a whole. And then they're frustrated with leadership. Employees are wary of a continued commitment to DEI when communications aren't shared as regularly as they would like. And then reality number 3. The demographic shift is happening across our entire ecosystem. Our customers and consumers, our talent, our suppliers, our vendors, investors, elected officials, community stakeholders, it simply looks different, and it's the rapidly shifting demographics. By 2045, the United States will become minority white. And then when we think about talent and we think about the impacts of the bottom line and our customers, I turn to my Gen Z friends and I think about 75% of Gen Z will not spend money with a company they don't see as reflecting or upholding values that align with their own views. So there's this huge opportunity cost that we're going to miss if we can't help develop inclusive practices that help support or relate to huge swaths of the population. So these realities truly influence our work. We have the external, political, and legal reality, the cultural reality, the demographic reality, collectively coming together to what I believe is our critical turning point. And in this moment, it's a delicate balance to think about how we navigate going forward, because there's real risks when we think about action and inaction. The risk of doing too much by over-complying, pushing the start button too fast, then having quickly to retract, because we actually don't have a clear definition, I don't know if you all do, of what illegal DEI actually means. Then I think about sometimes where we've applied some US-centric approaches to DEI, we can't leave out our global workforce, because we'll ignore, for example, the reporting requirements in the UK, equal pay laws in Brazil, or the EU CSR requirements, for example. But then, doing too little with this wait and see approach, this could really impact us and bottom line impacts. Investor scrutiny and reputational risks. Stakeholders are closely watching what we're doing in this work. As I mentioned, 75% of Gen Z consumers refuse to buy from brands that don't uphold their DEI promise. And we've seen some of the power of the consumer boycotts. They are powerful when we think about what is working. And it's a dilemma due to dependent conditions, because consumers may be dissatisfied if a company takes a stand, or they may be satisfied that their company is out front and center. No one wants to be on the administration's list, and nobody wants to be on the boycott list. So it is a delicate balance. So how do we do this together? I think we have to think bigger as we balance these multiple realities and going forward. We're evolving. DEI is dead. Performative DEI, that is, and this is our opportunity to get it just right. And as we use inclusion and belonging and culture, how do we apply cultural intelligence to the work that we do? Secondly, let's not get tied up in the algorithms. Let's not get tied up in the headlines that can be really defeating at times and keep us hooked, because our colleagues deserve better. The factual information, that is our responsibility, and quite frankly, I think is table stakes. And then we've always aligned to the business case. But I think thinking bigger requires us to truly broaden our policies, our procedures, our programs to align to access and opportunity, economic and community development, thinking bigger to become that trusted brand for our customers of the future. So I want to ask, by show of hands, who's all in with me to build inclusive workplaces? Thank you. Thank you so much for your time together today. I would love to continue to be in touch with you. I invite you to scan the QR code if you're interested in the executive playbook for expanding the impact of DEI or the slide presentation presented today. We'd love to share that with you, and let's keep expanding the impact of inclusion and belonging together.